love made for his children. I was born July 8, 1912 in Lake Point, Utah. My father worked in a wool factory in Lake Point. When I was 15 months old, my parents took me to Santa Ana, California. We lived in a small hotel room a short time after I arrived in Santa Ana. I contracted pneumonia. My father was not home very much as he was away all the time looking for gold which he never found. Many a time I went to school with no shoes and very ragged clothes. I remember the best Christmas I ever had. When I was 8 years old, I was in downtown Santa Ana and looking at a window filled with Christmas toys. And a stranger came by and seen me and asked me if I would like the little red wagon. He bought me the wagon and shoes and bought me the biggest meal I ever had. I will always be grateful for that. Shortly after my mother left my father and divorced, then my mother married a man named Jack Delaney and moved to Victorville, California. Jack Delaney worked for the railroad there, and he was very mean to my brother Earl and me. He broke the butt end of a rifle over my back because of a slight argument. After that, I ran away to Santa Ana to look for my father. I had nothing to eat, so I went through garbage cans to find something to eat. I finally went to live with my brother Kenneth, but he was poor and hungry too, so there wasn't any room for me. So my brother Earl and I left Santa Ana. Where Earl and I found some money at that time in the street. We lived off of that for a little while. We were not going to school then, so we were picked up by the truant officers and put in a reform school. We were taken out of there by Connie, my sister. We then went to live with Connie and Millie. Things did not improve any as they were having a tough time. Connie was working at the studios in Hollywood, and she got me a job with a man named Jeff Barnhart, who was working in Hollywood, a circus picture. I was working with the circus horses after the picture was completed. We moved the horses back to Inglewood, California. I slept in the stables. There I contracted polio and I was sent to General Hospital in Los Angeles. There I stayed for 8 months learning to walk again. Not anyone of my family knew I was in there. Finally, they found my mother. They came from the East Coast to get me out. After another year of learning to walk, I lived with my mother, Earl, and Millie, my sister. Later, Earl and I lived in a small room in Japantown in Los Angeles. Earl bought me a bike and I delivered Western Union telegrams. I went to school. Then we moved to East LA, which is Los Angeles. We worked in Brunswick drugstore. I was a wholesale druggist at the time. This was happy time. We bought an old player piano and had a lot of good times. I went to Garfield High School to the 9th grade. Then mother moved. Millie got married. Earl went to live with Leonard, and I lived with my father and Connie for a while. Then I went to live with my sister. I went to live with my sister Millie in Sweetwater, Texas. There, after an argument with her husband, I hitchhiked to San Antonio, Texas. There I decided to join the Army. I lied about my age and they would not accept me until my mother signed for me. That took about 2 months. I stayed at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and finally was accepted for the Army. I was sent to Fort Clark, Texas in the 1st Cavalry. While there, I was still hostile and fighting quite a bit. I fought in the ring in Uvalde, Texas at one time. I got into a fight in Villa Cudi, Mexico, and went to a Mexican jail. The jails there are terrible. The prisoners are confined in a cell 5 foot wide, 5 foot long. At that time, desertion was 10 days in the Army, but I was found in 9 days, taken back to the stockade at Fort Clark, and received 30 days time in stockade and hard labor. As soon as I got out of the stockade, we were having trouble on the Mexican border with cattle rustlers. When we got that settled down, we had to make a fast rescue in Mexico to rescue a Dr. Brinkley, a citizen of the USA. This Dr. Brinkley was forced to leave Del Rio, Texas, and he moved his radio station to Villa Cudi, Mexico. Well, there he got in trouble with the residents of Villa Cudi, so we were forced to cross the Rio Grande River. I got him back to the USA. We kicked in the door of the radio station amid Mexicans with clubs and pitchforks and knives. My horse was next to the door of the radio station, and Dr. Brinkley was inside, was put on aboard my horse. I made a jump to get on my horse also. I missed him, and the cavalry troop was gone for the river. I ran for the river, and someone let loose with a gun, and I was shot in the leg, but I did get back across the river. After my discharge from the cavalry in 1935, the life of a soldier at this time was very exciting, and our pay was $9 per month. I went with another soldier who was discharged to Pennsylvania. I did not like the setup in Pennsylvania, so I started hitchhiking from home to California. After crossing the country, I was hitchhiking across the California desert. I could not get a ride, so I started walking. After many miles in the desert without water, I got into a terrible sandstorm. I had to dig a hole in the sand to protect my head and my skin. It helped a little, but when it was over, all the skin was taken off my face. I could not open my mouth, my tongue was swollen up, my lips were cracked. I had no water. I tried to drink my urine, but it was too salty, and it made it worse. After many more miles of walking, I seen in the distance a railroad crew working on the tracks. I went over there for a drink of water. They would not let me leave there for 4 days until I was able to travel. I finally got in a town in Arizona and was hungry, so I started knocking on back doors and begging for food. This food I took to a place under a railroad bridge to cook and eat because I was determined to hop a freight train going to California. There I met some railroad bums, and we put all our food together in a can. We all had stew, nothing like it. I caught the first freight train to California to be warm on the train. I climbed into a freight train refrigerator car where they kept the ice. There I found 2 sweet potatoes on the bottom. Finally, on arriving in Needles, California, I was taken off the train and put in jail. After a week, I was transferred to Victorville jail. I was on my way to San Benito for trial for 2 sweet potatoes. The sheriff of Victorville knew me real well, and so I got more to eat than the other prisoners. After a week in the jail in Victorville, I was taken to San Bernardino, put in jail for trial. After 2 weeks there, I went on trial, and in the meantime, my mother had found me in jail. When she came to the jail to see me, she did not recognize me at all because the skin was still off my face. I went to trial there, and the judge dismissed the case and told me he would have done the same thing. Then I went to live with her and Jack Delaney in San Bernardino. When I left there, after many arguments with him, I went to East Los Angeles and joined the Army Reserves and went to work by driving the truck. I drove trucks until my license was taken away for 1 year because I let a truck go over a mountain loaded with jam and jelly caused by snow and ice on the mountain. Soon after that, I met your mother and we were married. Times were still rough. I started driving again, hauling cement. From there, I went to work on the WPA, which is a Work in Progress Administration. After that, in 1940, I was called back to the Army for active duty and sent to help start an Army camp, Camp Roberts. Then I was moved to Camp Young in the desert. From there, I was sent to Bushnell Hospital in Utah for medical training. From there, I was sent to Fort Lewis, Washington. After combat medical training, I was sent to Boston, Massachusetts. I was sent to Europe and war. On the way overseas, our convoy ran into a German Wolfpack submarine patrol. Our ship was rammed by another ship and put in a big hole in the bow. At that time, the convoy left us alone because we could keep up the pace. We sailed alone to Southampton, England. There, after 4 weeks of more training, we sailed to France and the war. After going through France and Germany, the war was finally over. The medical department needed medics to work in the concentration camps for I seen horrible things. I worked in bisecting bodies, making notes for the American Medical Association with surgeons from the Mayo Clinic in New York. After that, I was sent to France to fly home. I did not want to fly, so I was sent to Antwerp, Belgium to catch a ship. I was sent back to Boston and then to Utah where I was discharged. Your mother and I moved to Los Angeles where I went to work for Western Wax Paper Company in 1945. I quit work there to go to work for the Long Beach Oil Development Company. While there, I was called back to active duty for Korea campaign. I reported to Fort MacArthur, California. There I was training men for combat medics. But the money was not enough to raise my family, so I requested the discharge, which was granted. I then returned to Long Beach Oil Development Company to complete 30 years of service in the oil fields. While on vacation in Hawaii, I suffered a heart attack and flew home. I was operated on for open heart surgery, where they replaced 3 arteries in my heart. But my doctor request By my doctor's request, I was not able to return to work, so I had to retire, which I am now doing at this time. I hope that someday you can look back and say this was my father's life. It was rough and tough, but he made it. In my last half of life, your mother and I are enjoying the better side of life. And as this tape, I am sitting in San Antonio, Texas at the Men at Hearts Convention. I might mention one thing during my cavalry career, that I was court-martialed at one time because I refused a direct order to shoot a horse. At that time, all the horses in the cavalry were examined, and those that didn't live up to cavalry specifications was branded with an IC, which means inspect and condemned, and they were shot and burned because the Army didn't want to get into other hands of people that would mistreat them. My horse that I had had for so many years was IC'd and done to be shot, and I refused a direct order to go do it. For that, I was court-martialed by a general's court-martial, and I was found guilty, but they dismissed the case, and after it was over, why the general sent me over a carton of cigarettes because of the fact that I was convicted and my fine was $1, but for the $1 that he gave me was for the cigarettes, because once you're tried and convicted in a court of military tribunal, you cannot be tried again for the same thing. So I had to be fined that $1, but the carton of cigarettes from the commanding general made up the difference. I have 5 children now. One named Paul, Larry Jr., Robert, Carol, and Joyce. I'm proud of my family. I've done my best to bring them up right. I guess they didn't understand why I had a short temper at times, but I guess from my life that my short temper went back to my early days. But I hope they all understand after this tape is being played. Paul was hurt in an accident with a shotgun. I've done my best to stay with him through his hardship. Larry Jr., he was just plugging along. He was one of the best draftsmen that I know. But he is well on his way to success now. Robert, he was involved in a motorcycle accident. We done our best, his mother and I, to stay with him. Carol, she is doing fine. She went to college, and I have to admit that I did not kind of help her through college. She done it all on herself, and she is now situated where she is in pretty good shape. Joyce, my daughter, she is very good. She calls home to check up on her dad about every day that her dad's around, that she can check up on him. Some of my past history on this tape, I have a hard time remembering the dates and the years, but it's been awful hard for me to remember, because things of a hardship nature like that is hard to remember dates and months and years, and you just remember it in your memory. But all of this is my life, and I hope that my family will just stay together like they are now, and let's be one close-knit family. I apologize now to the short tempers I had with my family when I was growing up, when they were growing up, rather, and I hope that now they understand why I had such a short temper, because I have been raised the hard way, and my temper has got me in trouble more times than once. There's a lot of other things that happen in my life, but right now, a lot of things I'd like to forget, but I never will be able to forget. But I hope my family now understands my short temper and different things that have happened during their life. To Paul, I say, you're more like your dad. The things has been rough through your problems with hospitals and fighting and determination to get through your problems at UCLA while you were in there under narcotics. You did fight the addiction that the narcotics brought. And I love you all very much. Larry Jr., I know my temper has been bad when we were working on cars while you needed help, but this time I apologize for that. Robert, we stayed with you when you was in care and with your motorcycle accident, but we didn't give up. It was a rough road for you too, and you're more like your dad too. You just refused to give up. I didn't give up when I had polio, although it took me over a year and a half to 2 years to learn to walk again. And to my three sons there, determination on all your parts has really been something, because Larry, you fought your way through your high school, you made your own decisions, ended up in your job that you have now, which is, on my part, real determination. Carol, you took it on yourself to make your own life. I don't think that I helped you very much along the way. I guess I did to a small extent. I did let you travel through Europe on your own. You made a success of yourself, and now you've traveled all over the world. You can have a conversation with anybody that has traveled all over the world. With all the foreign languages you speak, you can speak in any language that you want to. You have the initiative to talk to anybody from any foreign country, which is an advantage over anybody in the country that I know. Joyce, you've been faithful through the years. Your mother and myself, you've had your ups and downs, and you're still tops with me no matter what. And the children of my family are, to me, the tops in the world. So I'm going to say again that if there was ever a book published that you children can appreciate someday when I'm not here, this is an authentic tape. And I love you and your families very much.